All right, hey everyone. Topic of this video is going to be Sony versus Microsoft and who's actually, pro-consumer and everything. That's basically what we're going to be getting into today in this video. So, Sony and Microsoft, this is these are two giants in two ecosystems, and both of them, they are have very different approaches when it comes to gaming. And for years, the debate has been simple: exclusives, performance, controller preference, fanboy wars, console loyalty, things like that. But here's a question that nobody's asking loud enough: which one actually respects you? Which one is fighting for gamers and not just for your wallet? Because after everything we've covered in the past videos that I made, as we all know, physical media is dying, subscriptions are taking over, used games are getting crushed, and day one patches are ruining preservation. And it's time to look at the bigger picture. So today we're putting them head to head, not on graphics, not on frame rates, and we're doing this on consumer rights. One on pro-consumer policies, on who actually gives a damn about you. Let's get into it. All right, so Microsoft and everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with Microsoft, because honestly they've been making some moves that look very pro-consumer on the surface. They have Game Pass, and love it or hate it, it is a massive value proposition. Day one, they get day one first party releases. They have hundreds of games for a monthly fee, and they're not forcing you into it. You can still buy games outright. If you want to buy physical games, a physical copy of a game or whatever, you can do that. Or you subscribe to Game Pass or whatever to try a certain game that you've been wanting to try it or whatever. You try it and everything. You say, "Oh wow, I love this game. I really like it. And let me go to the store or go to the store or whatever to get a physical copy of the game." That's something you can do in that sense. That's at least one of the choices you have. Backwards compatibility. We all know that they've been killing it in that aspect. Thousands of games from the OG Xbox, Xbox 360, and Xbox One, playable on the Xbox Series X. Auto HDR, FPS boost. They're actually preserving their library, which is, as we all know, something Sony has been absolutely dragging their feet on. Also, smart delivery. You buy a game once, you get the best version of the best version on whatever Xbox you own. No extra charge, cross-buy, same deal. And they're not, forcing you into a proprietary storage solution. You can use standard NVMe drives as well. They're making it easy to upgrade without getting price gouged. That's basically what they're doing. And, obviously let's not forget the Xbox Series S, which is like, I think a $300 or $300 or so dollar console that gets you into the next gen gaming on a budget. So at least you have options or whatever. That's more accessibility. They're reaching for gamers, who are, less fortunate, who obviously, can't drop $500 on a console. It sounds great, right? Almost good to be true, but that's where the catch starts to creep in. So Game Pass is getting more expensive. They've already raised prices, and the more successful it gets, the more they'll push you towards it. They've already started making some game exclusives to Game Pass, meaning that you can't even buy them outright, which is that's getting concerning. And obviously, getting back to the Xbox Series S, there's that version of the Xbox doesn't have a disk drive. So in that case, there's no physical media. They've already been conditioning conditioning you for an all digital future. They obviously have not been as loud as they've been about it when it comes to Sony. With their the recent announcing them, basically killing physical media and stuff weeks ago. But they're not doing the same thing. I'm sorry, but they're still doing the same thing. That's what I meant to say. And Game Pass, that's their subscription hook. Once you're in, it's hard to leave. All right, so getting into Sony and everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly for them. Now, getting into Sony, the company that we have been, and obviously like thousands upon thousands of other people on social media and everything online have been, we've been roasting for the last 6 videos or however long it's been. I'm sorry, the last few weeks. But let's be fair, let's be transparent and everything. They've done some good things too. They've had exclusives. Exclusives are where Sony has been dominating. They've had God of War, Spider-Man, The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Horizon Zero Dawn, and Ghost of Tsushima. Those are system sellers. They invest in single-player, story-driven experiences that you can't get anywhere else. That's a commitment to quality that Microsoft has struggled to match. Basically, innovation. The DualSense controller is genuine. I'm sorry. The DualSense controller is generally impressive. Haptic feedback and everything, adaptive triggers. They're pushing hardware forward in ways that actually enhance gameplay. And PlayStation Plus, they have revamped it to compete with Game Pass. It's obviously not as good, but it's something, and at least they're trying in that aspect. But here's where things get ugly, and I mean really, really ugly. The $70 games. They started that trend, and it's seemingly that they're not backing down. They raised PS Plus prices by about 30% with almost no notice. They launched the PlayStation 5 Pro at $700 with no disc drive and charge you an extra for the attachment. They're aggressively pushing towards an all digital future. They're fighting the used games market. They've tried to shut down the PS3 and Vita stores, showing zero regard for preservation. And let's not forget that they have a long history of anti-consumer patents. They've patented technology to block used games, to detect if you're watching a movie with someone who didn't pay, and to lock features behind paywalls. They've tried this before, they just keep getting better at hiding it. All right, so getting into the head-to-head, basically, who's going to win, whether it's like us, Sony or Microsoft or whatever. Putting them side to side, category by category, no bias and just facts. When it comes to backwards compatibility, Microsoft wins, obviously. No contest. They have thousands of games, auto HDR, FPS boost. So on the other hand, just barely PS4 games. PS3, forget about it and everything. I remember one thing my mom asked me about the PS3. I think she asked me does the PS5 does it play PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 games? And I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you that that's not the case. I mean, it plays PS4 games and everything, but PS1, PS2, PS3, it doesn't play any of those. And her response to that, well, that's stupid. And I'm like, yeah, it is stupid. It's unfortunate, but Sony doesn't want you to, Sony doesn't want you to do that. They want you to, buy those same games over again, and over and over and over again and everything, which is really, really annoying and frustrating. What else? Yeah, $70 games, no cross buy, and they also charge you to upgrade for sometimes too. I think if you have a PS4 game or whatever, a PS4 version of a game, let's say a Ghost of Tsushima, for example. Let's say you bought the PS4 version and everything. You want to play the PS5 version, you got to pay $10 for as a small fee to upgrade and everything. which quite frankly, I don't think you should be made to do that. I think if you bought the PS4 game, you should just be able to easily upgrade towards the PS5 version, not having to pay a small fee. Physical media support. Microsoft is guilty of this too, but at least they sell a disk drive Xbox Series X, while Sony is actively killing disks, which is like an advantage that Microsoft has over them. Subscriptions. Game Pass is objectively better. Then you get day one first party releases. You have the better library. You get more value. PS Plus is catching up, but it's not there yet, so Microsoft has an advantage there. Exclusives. In this department, obviously Sony dominates. It's not even close. Microsoft, they have Halo and Forza. I think Gears of War as well, even though I think that some of those games have crazied up and like given over to PlayStation. They've actually come out on PlayStation, but those exclusives, even those were struggling. Sony has a library of critically acclaimed generation-defining titles. So Sony has the advantage in that department. And also when it comes to the idea of consumer respect, Microsoft is obviously much more transparent. They communicate better. They listen to feedback. Sony on the other hand, as we've seen recently, secretive, defensive, and absolutely tone deaf. Absolutely tone deaf. Remember the PS3 store closure backlash? They only backtracked when because we screamed. Microsoft in that case has an advantage. And touching on that, I don't really know if like Sony is going to reverse their decision on physical media. We have been raising holy hell online. People have still been screaming about this. Like I think, like since they announced they're going to kill physical media like 3 weeks ago. But I don't know, man. It's just crazy. But on paper, it seems that Microsoft wins. But here's the thing. On paper is different in practice, and Microsoft's pro-consumer moves are also pro-Microsoft. Game Pass locks you into their ecosystem. Backwards compatibility is great, but it's also a marketing tool. Smart delivery, that's nice, but it's also a way to keep you from leaving. That's the thing. The reality is, both companies are corporations. Both of them want your money. Both are pushing subscriptions. Both are killing physical media. Microsoft is just, nicer about it. For now, which is the scary part. All right, so getting into the truth, the real truth, I guess. They're both the same. So yeah, the uncomfortable truth is that both Sony and Microsoft, and obviously, Nintendo, but we're not really discussing them. We're just discussing Sony and Microsoft in this video. Sony and Microsoft are not your friends. They're not fighting for you. They're fighting for market share. And whichever one wins, you lose. We as the consumers, we lose. So think about it. If Microsoft dominates, Game Pass becomes the standard. And once there's no competition, price goes up. Content gets cut, games get rushed. You're renting everything. Same for Sony. It's what they seemingly, what they're they're seemingly in lead right now. Microsoft's not really doing anything. Nintendo, whatever, is like seemingly doing their own thing. This is why we need competition, because competition, leads to greater effort, and we get better products and everything, as a consumer. So that's why we need competition. So yeah, if Sony dominates, they don't have to compete on price, value, or more importantly, consumer respect, which is seemingly what they don't have any respect for us right now. They can charge $80 for games, charge $200 for a disc drive, $200 a year for PS Plus, and who knows, with like them constantly rising subscription prices and everything, it just might hit that. It just might hit that level. And you'll pay it because they have the exclusives that you want. So the only way we win is if they're forced to compete. That means both of them need to be strong. That means we need to hold both of them accountable. That means voting with our wallets, making noise, and never letting them forget that we are the ones who made them. We are the ones who keep them in business and everything. I know that, like, I've said that, I think multiple times throughout my past videos, but I need people to realize that we don't answer to them, they answer to us. We built them up, we pay for their products and games and merchandise and everything. We keep them in business and everything, and they got it backwards and everything. I'll keep saying it as much as I need to and stuff. So who's actually pro-consumer? So to answer the question is neither, really. But Microsoft is doing a better job of looking like they are. And right now, I'd say that's enough to earn my edge, but, barely and everything. I'd say I'm I'd say I was a PlayStation gamer for like quite some time, but like with recent Sony practices and everything, it's like we realized like it's better to just be a gamer, just a gamer with like no loyalty to any corporations, whether it's Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo, or whatever. And try to find the best deal in gaming that benefits you the most, that gives you the most satisfaction, when you want to play some games or whatever. All right, so getting into the outro on the call to action. So I suppose my final take after like all the videos I made, Sony is the bigger villain right now, definitely. They're more aggressive, more anti-consumer, more tone deaf, absolutely tone deaf. Microsoft is playing the long game right now. They're building goodwill, they're earning trust, and slowly pulling you into their ecosystem. But you need to remember that both of these corporations are dangerous, but one is more honest about it. So if you're a gamer, you need to watch both of them. Don't get loyal and don't pick a side. Pick yourself. Buy physical while you can. Keep used games alive. Support preservation. Complain about price hikes. Cancel subscriptions when they get too expensive. They'll listen if we make them. I know, like, you've seen like a bunch of people saying, a bunch of doomers online saying like, oh, there's like, nothing we can do. And, there's a bunch of, NPC mouth breathers online that are probably either, paid Sony shills and everything to, promote them or whatever, or they're just too tone deaf to realize like all the rights and everything that we're gonna lose if we let these companies win and everything. No, they won't listen if we make them. But yeah, that's the end of it. End of this video for now. But obviously, I want to keep the conversation going. So here's my question: who do you trust more? Do you trust Sony or Microsoft more, or neither? Drop a comment. Let's get a real debate going. If you made it this far, thank you. Seriously, this series has been somewhat of a labor of love because I really enjoy gaming and everything. It seems like they are trying to make it worse for us consumers and gamers and everything, which I think is just crazy because we're literally the ones that keep it afloat. We buy the stuff and everything, to keep the companies and corporations and business and everything. I don't know. It's just like really, really backwards and everything and stuff. But anyway, keep fighting for your games, keep owning what you buy, and never let a corporation tell you what you deserve. Anyway, I'll see you with the next one. Take care.